My wife of 6 years left me for a man she thought would give her a better life, only to show up a year later to try and reconcile what we once had when the man was lying about his wealth the whole time. It's funny how life can twist and turn in ways you never expect. This is the story of my marriage to Sarah, how it ended, and how karma played a role that I never saw coming. Sarah and I met in college. We were inseparable, sharing dreams, ambitions, and a love that felt like it could conquer the world. After graduation, we tied the knot, and for 6 beautiful years, we built a life together. We weren't rich, but we were happy. We had a cozy apartment, a couple of cats, and a circle of friends who were like family. Life was simple, yet fulfilling. But as it happened, Sarah was always a dreamer. She often talked about wanting more money, more adventure, more excitement. I understood her aspirations, but I also believed that happiness wasn't solely tied to material wealth. I was content with our life, but Sarah began to feel suffocated by what she perceived as limitations. About 2 years into our marriage, Sarah started spending time with a new co-worker, Mark. He was charming, ambitious, and painted a picture of a life filled with luxury and adventure. I could see the spark in her eyes when she talked about him, and while I felt a twinge of jealousy, I trusted her. I thought it was just a passing phase. Then one fateful evening, Sarah came home with a heavy heart. She sat me down and told me that she wanted a divorce. She believed that she could find happiness with Mark, who had promised her a lavish lifestyle. My world shattered in an instant. I begged her to reconsider, to remember the life we built together, but she was resolute. She wanted more than what I could offer. The divorce was finalized within a few months, and I watched as she moved out, taking pieces of our life with her. I was heartbroken, but I also knew I had to move on. I threw myself into work and tried to focus on self-improvement. As time passed, I began to heal, slowly rediscovering myself outside of the relationship. A year later, I met Emily at a local coffee shop. She was vibrant, funny, and had a warmth that drew me in. We connected over shared interests, and our relationship blossomed quickly. Emily was everything I needed: supportive, understanding, and genuinely happy with the simple things in life. With her, I felt whole again. One evening, as Emily and I were cozied up on the couch watching a movie, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there stood Sarah, looking disheveled and anxious. My heart sank. It had been a year since I'd seen her, and I wasn't sure how to react. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice trembling. I glanced back at Emily, who gave me a reassuring nod. I stepped aside, allowing Sarah to enter. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and I could feel Emily's eyes on me, silently questioning what was happening. "Sarah, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I need to talk to you," she said, avoiding my gaze. "It's about Mark." I felt a pang of curiosity mixed with caution. "What about him?" She took a deep breath, her eyes finally meeting mine. "He wasn't who he said he was. He lied about everything: his job, his wealth. I thought I was going to live this amazing life, but it turned out he was just a con artist. I lost everything." As she spoke, I could see the pain etched on her face. It was a mixture of regret and vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. I came back to see if we could try again. I miss what we had, and I realized now that I took it all for granted. I felt a rush of emotions: anger, sadness, and a strange sense of vindication. I glanced at Emily, who was watching the exchange with a mix of sympathy and confusion. I turned back to Sarah, my heart pounding. "Sarah, you left me for a fantasy. You thought you could find happiness in someone else, and it didn't work out. I can't just forget that," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I know," she replied, tears welling in her eyes. "I messed up. I was blinded by the idea of a better life. But I've realized that what we had was real. I want to fix this." I took a deep breath, weighing my words carefully. I've moved on. I've found someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I can give her." I turned slightly to gesture towards Emily, who was still quietly observing. "Emily, this is Sarah," I said, introducing them. "My ex-wife." Emily extended her hand, and Sarah hesitated before shaking it. The tension in the room was palpable. I could see the realization dawn on Sarah's face as she processed the situation. "Sarah, I'm happy now," I continued, my voice firm but compassionate. "I rebuilt my life, and it's better than I ever imagined. I can't go back to what we had. I won't go back." Tears streamed down Sarah's cheeks as she nodded, understanding the weight of her choices. "I'm so sorry for everything," she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't realize how much I was risking until it was too late. I watched her, feeling a mix of empathy and closure. "Sometimes we have to learn the hard way," I said softly. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never wanted to learn. After a few moments of silence, Sarah wiped her tears and stood up. I understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I hope you find happiness. With that, she turned and walked out the door, leaving me and Emily in the quiet of our living room. I closed the door and turned to Emily, who wrapped her arms around me, offering comfort. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, though I felt a mix of relief and lingering sadness. "Yeah, I think I am. It's just a lot to process." Emily smiled softly, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. "You did the right thing. You deserve happiness, and I'm glad you found it with me." In that moment, I realized that while Sarah's arrival had stirred up old feelings, it also solidified what I had with Emily. Life had a way of balancing itself out, and I was grateful for the lessons learned. As the days turned into weeks, I found peace in knowing that sometimes karma does come knocking. And when it does, it's not about revenge. It's about growth, understanding, and moving forward. On to the next story. My wife asked for a divorce when I got made redundant from my job, thinking I wouldn't be able to support her lavish lifestyle, only for her to see me years later as a business owner and living my best life. A little over 5 years ago, I was working at a tech company that I thought I would retire from. I was in my late 30s, had a decent salary, and we lived a comfortable life. My wife, let's call her Sarah, was used to the finer things in life. Designer bags, fancy dinners, and spontaneous trips to Europe were the norm for us. I didn't mind, as I loved making her happy. But then, everything changed. The company went through a massive restructuring, and I was one of the unfortunate souls who got made redundant. I remember that day vividly. I came home, sat on the couch, and told Sarah the news. Instead of empathy, I was met with an icy silence. A few days later, Sarah sat me down. She told me she couldn't see a future with someone who was no longer a provider. I was devastated. I tried to explain that this was just a temporary setback, but she was adamant. She wanted a divorce, and I was left with nothing but the clothes on my back and a shattered heart. The divorce was painful. I had to move into a small apartment, and every time I saw her, I felt like I was losing a part of myself. She moved on quickly, flaunting her new lifestyle with someone who could provide for her. I was left wondering how someone I loved so deeply could turn so cold. After the divorce, I hit rock bottom. I was unemployed, lonely, and felt like a failure. But then I had an epiphany. I realized I had two choices: wallow in self-pity or rise from the ashes. I chose the latter. I started networking and applying for jobs, but nothing seemed to fit. Then one night, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post about starting an online business. It piqued my interest, and I spent hours researching. I had always been tech-savvy, so I thought, why not? I spent the next few months learning everything I could about e-commerce. I worked tirelessly, often late into the night, while holding down a part-time job to pay the bills. I faced countless failures and setbacks, but I kept pushing. Slowly, I began to see progress. I launched my first product, a niche gadget that I believed had potential. To my surprise, it took off. Sales started rolling in, and I reinvested every penny back into the business. I expanded my product line, created a brand, and built a website. I was living and breathing my new venture. Fast forward a few years, and my business has grown exponentially. I now own a successful e-commerce company that generates 6 figures annually. I've moved into a beautiful home, travel frequently, and live a lifestyle that I never imagined I could achieve on my own. One day, I was at a local coffee shop, and I saw Sarah walk in. She looked the same, but there was a difference. She seemed older, more worn. She spotted me and hesitated. I was taken aback by the mixture of emotions that flooded through me. I had long since moved on, but seeing her brought back memories of hurt and betrayal. She approached me, and I could see the surprise in her eyes. "Wow, you look great," she said, attempting to make small talk. I smiled politely but felt a rush of emotions. "Thanks, Sarah. I've been doing well. How about you?" She explained how she was struggling with her new partner. Apparently, he had lost his job, and they were now living paycheck to paycheck. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. As we talked, I could see her eyes scanning my clothes, my demeanor, and the confidence I exuded. I could sense her realization that I had thrived without her. The tables had turned, and I was no longer the man she discarded. After our conversation, I walked away feeling a mix of emotions. I felt proud of what I had accomplished, but I also felt a sense of closure. I had built a life for myself that I loved, and I was no longer defined by someone else's perception of my worth. Looking back, I realized that the divorce was a blessing in disguise. It pushed me to grow, to find my passion, and to create a life that was truly mine. I learned that my worth isn't tied to my job or my ability to provide material things. It's about resilience, determination, and self-love. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.